I think it's pretty clear why Super Mario 3D All-Stars was such a disappointment, at least for me. I mean, I only spent, an entire half hour laying smack down to it in that last video. Same thing for Nintendo's recent business activities, which I had no better spot to address than in a video about that collection. I'll stick to my promise and won't go into detail about it again, but suffice to say the collection was really lazy and even had numerous missed opportunities and baffling downgrades from the original versions of the games. Even in the case of Galaxy, which I thought had the least amount of problems in the transition from original to the collection, I'll be sticking to the originals. That's about it. I won't dwell on that stuff too much since there's still one more game left for me to cover. Back on that 35th anniversary direct, it was revealed that we were not only getting 3D All-Stars, but also something else that was rumored for quite a while. So, the Wii U. I mentioned it in earlier episodes of this marathon. It's only one of the most high-profile financial disasters in recent gaming history, after all. When the Switch came out, it had mostly brand new games such as Super Mario Odyssey, but it also had a healthy mix of games ported over from the Wii U. The two systems are somewhat similar in power, at least I assume they are, so this was a fairly logical move. If you have all these games your fans love that are trapped on a failed console and your current system is powerful enough to run practically flawless ports of them, then why not bring them over? Stuff like Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart 8, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, New Super Mario Bros. U, and so on. There was one game, though, that was never ported to the Wii U, to the point of being a meme, and that's Super Mario 3D World. It was the system's 3D Mario game and refused to come over to Switch for several years. What made it so funny, and maybe a bit infuriating for some, was the games Nintendo chose to bring over before it. They brought over New Super Mario Bros. U, the Wii U's trademark 2D Mario game, as well as its expansion pack New Super Luigi U in 2019. The year prior, they had ported Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, a spin-off based on a minigame from 3D World. The final nail in the coffin was how they added 3D World as a level style in Super Mario Maker 2. It was by that point people were probably thinking, well, what the hell, are you gonna port this damn thing already about 3D World? They seemed like they almost wanted to bring it over, but they never committed to it. It was a consistent rumor that they were planning to, which was only further ignited by that leak I mentioned in the previous video. Well, the anniversary direct arrives and the port is officially announced. I remember being happy about it because I could finally play 3D World, a game I had wanted to but couldn't. However, this wouldn't just be a mere port of the game to Switch. No, this package would have something else in it. We got a mysterious teaser of this strange stormy area that vaguely resembled 3D World levels except on small islands. The shot pans over to Mario in the cat suit, staring at what appears to be a gigantic cat bell. The full title of the port then appears, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, which instantly calls back to something like Superstar Saga plus Bowser's Minions. This announcement launched a wave of fan speculation. What could this mean? What would this Bowser's Fury expansion be like? Will my dad ever bring the milk back home? Oh, shit. Sorry. Don't know how that one got in. The teaser didn't give us a whole lot to go off of and ended with the release date in February 2021. It was a while to wait, but with how intriguing this seemed, I didn't mind too much. Once the game was a month away, Nintendo posted a couple overview trailers for the release, and it was here we finally got a closer look at what this Bowser's Fury expansion was all about. Turns out it would be an open-ended collectathon style game that repurposed 3D World assets. It also appeared to be more open world than even Odyssey was, having its areas directly connected with a large body of water like it's Wind Waker or something. Before then, I was mildly intrigued by Bowser's Fury, but this is what really turned my head. I made it fairly clear how much I love the collectathon Mario games, and this would be yet another one of those. Needless to say, right up my alley. But then, they just had to add something else even crazier in there. The game's name was no accident. Bowser would appear as a gigantic monster resembling Giga Bowser from Smash Bros. He would unleash his fury on the world, which would cause a hailstorm of fireballs and other crazy effects. Mario could then collect that huge cat bell to grow to Bowser's size, complete with a Super Saiyan looking cat suit. I thought it looked pretty damn cool, like a solid addition to make the 3D World port even more worth the purchase. You see, when Nintendo actually tries, they're capable of producing incredible things, and this seemed like it could be another one of those. I picked up 3D World plus Bowser's Fury the day it came out, and proceeded to play and enjoy 3D World. That summer is when this marathon began, and I figured I'd wait to play Bowser's Fury until its very end. I wanted this to be in rough release order anyway, and it would present a unique opportunity for me. I'm a seasoned Mario veteran, having played and oftentimes replayed all his games for years, so I was interested. How is Bowser's Fury from the perspective of someone like me? A person who knows practically every one of these games back to front, and who considers the 3D Collectathon games the apex of the series. We finally reached the end of the line for this gigantic retrospective, and Bowser's Fury is the game I knew I wanted to save for last. So let's get right into it. What do I, a Mario veteran, think of this expansion? Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Accessing Bowser's Fury is as simple as selecting it from the menu. You don't have to beat 3D World or anything, and in fact, you don't even have to touch it whatsoever. Regardless, Bowser's Fury opens with an absurdly long loading screen. Alright, in all seriousness, Mario appears, walking in front of Peach's castle in a scene reminiscent of 3D World's opening, fittingly enough. He notices a trail of black splotches of goop, and following it, comes across one of those Shadow Mario symbols from Super Mario Sunshine. Well, I already like this. As you'll see, Bowser's Fury has more than one homage to that particular game, which I always dig. I am a certified Sunshine guy after all. When he approaches it, the graffiti opens up a portal, again, like Sunshine, and Mario finds himself in a strange new land. This is Lake Lapcat. The place is all stormy, and as Mario makes his way across a shipwreck, he encounters Bowser. He's absolutely gigantic and has seemingly been overtaken by some dark energy as he launches an assault in an attempt to take Mario out. Mario rushes to a nearby lighthouse, near which is a pile of blocks bearing Bowser's face. He goads the monster into destroying them, which allows him to jump on top of this small blocky hill and grab the first cat shine. See? What did I tell you? The collectibles are called shines. You starting to see my point about this being a homage? When Mario grabs it, Bowser retreats into the inky black lake, as a portion of it gets cleared up. A small archipelago emerges from underneath, indicating that this whole Fury Bowser thing, not exactly normal. Mario explores the area a little more and comes across Bowser Jr., that same little shit who nearly caused the plumber to get a criminal record back during the Isle Delfino incident. This time, though, he's in trouble. Bowser has gone mad with power as a result of his son messing around with that magic brush he still somehow has after all these years, and there's no way for him to get his dad to calm down. He asks Mario for help, and understandably, the plumber is pretty reluctant to join him. The dynamic between these two is really entertaining in this story, by the way, with a surprising amount of character for a simple expansion pack. Bowser Jr. is embarrassed to have to ask for his father's arch-nemesis to help, and Mario is rather skeptical of his story. At the end of the day, though, Mario's quite the upstanding guy, so he agrees to help out. After all, the lake is in danger because of this, and it's home to a ton of adorable cats. If you couldn't tell, this game has a pretty hefty cat theme. 3D World was already leaning into that, what with introducing a cat power-up and whatnot, but it's Bowser's Fury that truly goes all in. The entire area is inhabited by multicolored kittens, giant calicos, and other cat-related objects. In some sense, it's implied this lake may be the original source of the cat bell power-up, and is possibly located within the vicinity of the Sprixie Kingdom. Now, that's pure speculation, but I don't think it's entirely unfounded. I'll touch on the game's theming and visuals and stuff in more detail later, though. In Bowser's Fury, we have to collect cat shines to awaken the Gigab Cat Bell, which will allow Mario to grow huge and face off against Fury Bowser to hopefully calm him the hell down already. Personally, I don't want to say mixed feelings on this story. Slightly wishy-washy thoughts might be a better term. For one, I love how it's something wholly original for a Mario game. Yeah, they finally did it. They made a game in this series that doesn't revolve around, in any way whatsoever, that damn princess getting kidnapped again. Holy shit, it only took them 35 goddamn years to do it. Yeah! You go, Nintendo! In fact, Peach doesn't appear at all in this game, not even as a cameo of any sort. It's just Bowser being corrupted by Egad's magical brush and us having to calm him down. A novel concept, and I like the idea of heroes and villains having to put their differences aside to accomplish a greater good. That said, I feel like more could have been done with this premise. The interactions we do get between Mario and Bowser Jr. have a fair bit of entertainment value, especially when Mario sits there rolling his eyes at everything Jr. says. But think about it. Can you imagine if there was a few full-on cutscenes of these two bickering and things like that? There was so much potential for really funny interactions between these bitter enemies having to put up with each other. But unfortunately, we don't really get much outside of Mario's body language. Really, the story kind of feels a little understated in general, serving as more of a justification for the mechanics. Same thing for Lake Lapcat. It's not what I'd call a shockingly original setting, but it could have made for some neat story beats or world building for the series. Now, to be fair, Mario's stories and game worlds are usually like that, not much more than gameplay justifiers. But since this game has a premise that's so out there for this series, I just think it would have been cool to see more done with it. And it's not like it would have to redefine the standards for the medium or anything. I mean, take Sunshine, for example. Similarly to Bowser's Fury, the whole game takes place in one location that the game attempts to build up. Isle Delfino felt like a living, breathing place in the Mario universe, and not just a series of disconnected locations that serve as nothing more than a playground for the gameplay. Since Bowser's Fury is also set in a singular, named area, it would have been the perfect place to create a more intriguing world. Imagine if the cats of the lake were fleshed out like the Piantas were, with their own troubles that come from the pollution of the lake. I get why they didn't do this, it is a short expansion. They went the extra mile, that would have been so cool. As is, Lake Lapcat is decent and somewhat memorable because of its bizarre appearance, but not much more than that. Mechanically, Bowser's Fury is very simple and yet still has a fair bit going on in several ways. From the most basic level, it takes the physics system and general moveset from 3D World and combines them with something optimized for a more open-ended collectathon type game. Mario has the same moves that he has in that game, including long jumps, side flips, and whatnot. He even has the dive from Odyssey, albeit albeit it has a shorter range here, as well as the roll and ground pound jump from that same game. I'm still a bit disappointed the side flip is closer to how it was in Galaxy, where it's more stiff and scripted feeling, as opposed to how loose and fluid it felt in 64 and Sunshine. I'm also mixed on the lack of the combo jumps. I see why they're not here, it might have broken some parts of the level design, but I was never a fan of how 3D Land and World both didn't have them, but those are honestly minor complaints. It's another case of the Mario 64 principle, which is an important thing for an open-ended 3D platformer to get right. I mean, Mario's moveset is good enough to make simple running around fun in its own right. A large factor that helps with this is no doubt how Mario isn't locked to 8 directions like he was in 3D World. Here he has 3D World physics, which I always thought felt really good, combined with full 360-degree control. It's essentially as good as the control a game in the 3D World engine can get. I guess unless Odyssey also runs in that engine, which is totally possible. You're also able to hold down the action button to run faster. I don't really like this. Like, the game this is based on, as well as 3D Land, it's just an unnecessary button you'll have to hold down. I think there's a reason why Doom source ports have an auto run option and why Half-Life had running as their default speed, while actually having a walk button. I'm not really sure why Nintendo suddenly forgot how analog sticks work for a few years, then remembered for one game, and then forgot again. Probably has something to do with Bowser's Fury being derivative of 3D World. That's not an excuse though. I don't think that run buttons have any business being in a 3D platformer. I can tolerate it though, it's not the worst thing ever. But still, on top of the base controls, which are satisfactory for exploration, Mario has several power-ups, which means that yes, Bowser's Fury is the first non-linear 3D Mario game to feature the 2D variant of power-ups, and the first one not to have a health bar. By that I mean, Mario picks up the power-up and has it indefinitely until you take a hit, therefore making the power-ups themselves act as your health. In the game, there's the traditional Mushroom, Fire Flower, and Starman, which need nothing new added on them. Additionally, there's some 3D World power-ups, including the Tanuki Suit, Boomerang Flower, Helicopter Block, and of course the Cat Bell, which function the exact same as they did in the base game. Sometimes the Boomerang Flower can be used to grab items in the distance, the Tanuki Suit comes in handy in the late game's trickier platforming sequences, and the Helicopter Block is great for vertical sections and general navigation. What really shines here though is the Cat Suit. In my 3D World review, I pointed out how much exploration potential this thing could provide in a more open 3D Mario game. Well, that fantasy ended up coming true in Bowser's Fury. The Cat Suit is quite possibly your most important tool for navigation. Like in the base game, you can use the power-up's claws to climb walls. I think the usefulness of this power-up sort of speaks for itself, but allow me to indulge anyway. Bowser's Fury makes frequent use of the vertical level design, perfect for the cat suit's climbing ability. On more than one occasion, there will be a collectible, such as a cat shine shard, hidden on top of a ridge or something otherwise best reached with the cat suit. You're also allowed to pass over some platforming sections with skillful use of the power-up. However, that said, it's properly balanced, as like in 3D World, you can only climb for so long before Mario loses his grip. If used well, it can be a powerful tool for progression, generally completing things quicker, tapping into that speedrunning appeal that's so central to this series' 3D games. In other words, it's everything I wanted to be done in another game with the cat suit. Pretty cool if you ask me. Also, I forgot to mention, but you're also able to carry multiple power-ups. In a system reminiscent of Super Mario Bros. 3, or probably more so New Super Mario Wii, you have an inventory that can store 5 of each power-up type, including another cat suit variant that gives you coins upon ground pounding. Power-ups can be found in question mark blocks scattered around the lake, or by having Bowser Jr. graffiti these question mark symbols at various points in the map. Doing that needs gyro controls with that odd pointer from the Captain Toad port, but you're also able to do it without that if you can use the cat suit to line the cursor up with the symbol. Thank goodness, there's no way I was gonna play this game with those shitty Joy-Cons. Last time I tried to do that with Odyssey, they pulled this garbage where they kept randomly disconnecting on me, which made me so mad I nearly smashed them with a hammer and chucked their remains out the window. So yeah, fuck those things. Speaking of Bowser Jr., he's essentially this game's take on a companion character. Honestly, he's probably the overall weakest one in the series. Remember how Flood added a whole new dimension to Mario's moveset, introducing an all-new skill ceiling with the insane movement potential for the experienced player? Recall how Cappy had a cool capture mechanic that added lots of variety and fun new moves in its own right? Well, Bowser Jr. isn't really like that. He's more like Master Luma in that he's pretty much something they added for convenience. Not bad, he can be pretty handy admittedly, but I sent him to help only a little bit since what he does amounts to occasionally killing enemies for you. So yeah, Bowser Jr. is a fine inclusion, but nothing really special. What is special though is the namesake of this game and its primary story element. It's what else but Bowser's Fury. As you're playing the game, maybe every 5 to 10 minutes or so, you'll see Bowser's gargantuan shell rising from the puddle of the sludge in the center of the lake. Side note, but I love how this looks. It's genuinely tense seeing that thing rise from the center, especially the first time. I imagine any kids who played this game and got scared by this will make video essays in the future about how much it terrified them, sort of like how 90s kids reminisce on Mario 64's haunted piano. It's gonna happen, believe me. Anyways, Bowser's shell slowly rises from the sludge, and eventually when he reaches a certain height, his spikes turn orange. The shell begins spinning around and it begins to rain. Once this happens, the shell shoots into the air, the sky darkens, any friendly cats around the lake turn evil, and a bunch of red-hot rocks fall all over the place. Bowser then starts to attack with his fire breath, shooting it directly and raining down fireballs. Oddly enough, of all things, this reminds me of that fictional evil farming game Vinesauce Joel joked about. Yeah, if you didn't know, that whole mystery was just a Vinesauce joke. Isn't that funny? It reminds me of that and how the police would come in that it happens sporadically. It shakes up the gameplay and prevents it from becoming too stale, and keeps you on edge throughout the game. At any moment, Bowser can get pissed and attack, making it so you'll have to outlast his assault. It can be stopped in one of several ways. One is to simply wait until it ends, but this sometimes doesn't work. Seemingly at random, Bowser's fury will last forever unless you fulfill the other condition, with that being to collect the cat shine. The story reason is that the power of the cat shine drives him away, meaning it's the only surefire way to end Bowser's rage. Honestly, if I'm making this all sound super complicated, it really isn't. There's a lot of stuff going on in this game to be sure, but it's all intuitive and pretty manageable. I'll admit that it's probably one of the most bizarre premises for a Mario game. I mean, a giant angry version of Bowser that semi-frequently attacks you seems like a recipe for weirdness, which for this series is saying a lot, but I kinda like that about it. Bowser is legitimately menacing in this game, and his assaults are fun to outlast. There are some times where it can be a bit annoying because you're trying to complete an objective, but Bowser insists on getting in the way of that, but by and large I enjoy the Fury mechanic and think it's a solid spin on the Mario series, unorthodox as it is. Another way to stop Bowser, and the method of accessing new areas of the lake, is probably the coolest of them all though. This is where the Giga Cat Bell comes in. When you pick it up, Mario grows to maybe 20 times his normal size, and as I said, begins to resemble a Super Saiyan. These are the primary boss fights in the game, and are unlocked by awakening the Giga Bell with a certain number of cat shines. Now that I think about it, these parts remind me a lot of Giant Clank. The islands of the lake become a little more than small obstacles as Giga Cat Mario and Fury Bowser face off against each other. Honestly, I found these fights a bit weak on the gameplay side of things, much like most Mario games. In general, defeating Bowser is pretty easy, just wait out his attack patterns and ground pound him. Oddly enough, the later fights are even easier, as they give you these rock posts to chuck at Bowser. I'm not too upset about this though, because like I said, I don't play these games for the bosses. Every now and then you'll also face off against a 3D World boss, or fight some enemies in a brief combat challenge, and they're about as easy as Bowser, if not more so. But hey, if anything, the Bowser fights are visually pretty damn great. Which, by the way, that reminds me, Bowser's Fury features visuals that are just as polished as the other recent games. It's based on 3D World, which I already thought was a fairly pretty game, and takes us to a new level. Like that game, it reaches a pretty solid standard in the objective quality department. It's in full HD, and I can't notice a jagged edge or stray pixel anywhere. While I like the sharp pixel look for older games, with the higher poly models and such of newer stuff, I'd prefer if it looks sharp, but not in a way where you can see a bunch of imperfections everywhere. Bowser's Fury lives up to that standard, like I said. In addition, it targets 60 FPS, and for the most part it maintains that. I say for the most part though because the frame rate can sometimes take a dump, dropping into what feels like the 20s or 10s or something. It's mostly when a ton of activity happens on screen, like when you're really close up to Fury Bowser, and particularly noticeable when on the Lucky Shine Island for whatever reason. This game was a sort of experiment, and was trying something semi-new for the Mario series, so I'm not too surprised the performance struggles a bit, but still I just thought I'd mention it. Bowser's Fury's art style is a bizarre mixture of 3D World and the more open games. Its levels are comprised of set pieces that come straight out of that game, except recontextualized into the islands of Lake Lapcat. I'll admit, I wouldn't call it the most mind-blowing presentation. I mean, it can even come off as slightly jarring in some ways to some people. That said, it's way more organic and thoughtfully laid out than something like Sonic Frontiers, for example. I mentioned that specifically because it too has traditional-looking set pieces scattered around a relatively open world. But in the case of Bowser's Fury, those things don't feel nearly as out of place. Is it still arbitrary that these islands have conveniently laid out courses and set pieces on them? For sure. But does that bother me? Not really, because it feels like there was actual thought put behind the placement of these things. And hey, I like the use of waterfalls. Those are always a visual treat in these games. What I especially love though is the cat theming the game goes for. Lake Lapcat, and it even has it in the name, truly is like if Japan's Cat Island were expanded to cover an entire ecosystem. You've got cat-themed ruins. The gates marking the areas are all cat-themed. There's kittens running around the islands. 3 tasks in the game ask you to bring various numbers of calico kittens to these huge calicos waiting around the Giga Cat shrines. And even the enemies often have tails and pointy ears. Personally, I really like cats. In fact, my family adopted 2 more of them very recently. I think Bowser's Fury leaning so hard into this theme is pretty fun. Even if a lot of the areas in Bowser's Fury have pretty typical tropey level themes like a snowy place or a lava lake. Not to mention the cats in this game are damn cute, and you can't change my mind on that. Also, and I pretty much already mentioned it, I love everything about how Fury Bowser looks. He kinda clashes with the more serene presentation of the rest of the game, and I mean that as a compliment. His gigantic shell emerging from the sludge in the center of the map is freaky and intimidating, both because of how it looks and its sheer size. When he's attacking, there's a certain intensity to it, and I already discussed how badass it is to grow huge and engage in what's essentially a kaiju battle with him. It's pretty clear that Nintendo wanted to evoke Godzilla vibes with Fury Bowser. I mean, he emerges from a body of water, is no doubt hundreds of feet or meters or whatever measurement system you use, and attacks by breathing fire similarly to Godzilla's atomic breath attack. I must admit that I haven't watched many Godzilla movies, but the concept of the creature is cool enough on its own. It is a bit of an out there design for Bowser, but I love it all the same. Also, damn man, that skybox. It's absolutely gorgeous, featuring surprisingly realistic shiny blue skies and beautiful clouds. Anyways, back to the gameplay. Bowser's Fury is, as I've said more than once by now, another collectible-based Mario platformer. Unlike the game it's based on, you're not just running to the end of a linear obstacle course, but rather looking for collectibles and stages based on exploration. So how are those... Wait, what was that? You mean to tell me this game doesn't have any stages? Then how is it... Oh, wait. Right, yeah. While the gameplay of Bowser's Fury is close to 64, Sunshine, and Odyssey in concept, the execution noticeably differs. Rather than having its stages divided into separate levels, Bowser's Fury combines all of them into one larger open world, a bit like Jak and Daxter the Precursor Legacy. It's maybe a bit larger than the Sand Kingdom from Odyssey if you need a comparison. Not as big as it could have been, but it's still pretty sizable by Mario standards. Levels are now islands in the lake, connected by water that you can travel quicker through with Plessy. Each island has 5 cat shines on it, and there's numerous shines scattered around the general Lake Lapcat area, reminding me of Castle Secret Stars or Isle Delfino shines. Again, a pretty unorthodox gameplay formula for one of these games. I think the best part about this formula is how scaled back it was. If you remember, one of my criticisms of Super Mario Odyssey was the sheer amount of content in it, a lot of which was filler that was put in to pad out the runtime. I liked collecting moons in that game because the collectathon formula is kinda hard to mess up, but 100% was essentially infeasible to accomplish in a reasonable amount of time because of just how bloated the collectible count was. It felt like the game that wasn't meant to be fully completed, but rather picked up and played on a road trip instead, and I don't prefer that for a collectathon. 64 and Sunshine had the perfect amount of stuff in them, as well as a very balanced content per square foot ratio, making them more replayable. They had their own pacing issues every now and then to be sure, but were so fun to play over and over again that I found it difficult to care, especially in Sunshine's case. The collectible count and pacing of Bowser's Fury is closer in line to the older games, and honestly it may just be the best paced collectathon Mario game so far. It takes the less archaic formula of Odyssey and applies it to the more reasonable collectible counts of the older games, feeling like a mixture of old and new. By that I mean, the game doesn't kick you back to the start of any given area after grabbing a cat shine, and lets you continue on. Like Odyssey, this game doesn't have a hub world, but in this case it's justified because of the open world. Although, the world is subdivided into 3 larger areas, which, as previously mentioned, can be unlocked by defeating Fury Bowser as Giga Mario. Unlike Odyssey, however, the collectibles are way less overconcentrated in singular areas. In fact, I'd argue this entire game could be a kingdom in Odyssey. There's 100 cat shines scattered throughout the lake, the least amount of main collectibles in the series so far. Needless to say, I think this is a welcome change of pace from the absurdity of Odyssey. Bowser's Fury had the sense to scale back its content to 1/10 of the size. It's possible to get every collectible in the game without spending the equivalent of over a day on it, instead taking about 6 hours or so. I don't know if I'd say I preferred the game over Odyssey because that game's moveset was just so robust, and the Cappy mechanic was just so fun to play around with, but I'd easily say Bowser's Fury is going to have more replay value for me in the long run. So, about those collectibles. What kinds of things do you have to do to collect them? Well, there's numerous fun objective types throughout the game. Every island has a relatively straightforward path on it, ending with a shine and a lighthouse. You're allowed to collect whichever shine you'd like to light it up, even if they more than likely intended you to run through the area's obstacle course to do so. Really, every area more closely follows that structure of being able to pick and choose the objectives you do, avoiding that odd structure that Sunshine had that admittedly truncated the exploration of its main campaign, irrespective of all the side quests it had. However, I like fully completing collectathons anyway, so I was going to do all 100 cat shines whether or not I needed to. Alongside this, most areas also have 5 cat shine shards to collect, which throughout my playthrough I jokingly called cat coin like it was some cryptocurrency or something. I don't know how I came up with that. It's probably better to forget. These provide some decent exploration, even if sometimes there is that one that could be really well hidden in a strange spot. Other objectives are where the real fun begins, though. Similarly to Odyssey, there's several timer challenges, whether it's racing to the shine on foot or on Plessy, collecting blue coins like it's a P-switch, or these bizarre Plessy medals that I also jokingly called a cryptocurrency. Again, don't ask. I thoroughly enjoyed these parts because they're probably the most challenging bits of gameplay the game has. That's a great thing, because if you ask me, this is a really easy game overall. There's not a lot of instant death hazards, and as a result, I didn't die once until I reached the 3rd area. The penalty for dying is surprisingly steep, taking away a huge portion of your coins and kicking you back to the start of the stage you're in, but that didn't happen often at all, like I said. It's kinda hard to die in this game. By contrast, some of these timer challenges actually required more than one attempt to clear, particularly the later ones. These are often enhanced by the set pieces in any given area. For example, Pipe Path Tower uses these clear pipes from 3D World, and the blue coin switch sees you weaving between them to find the optimal path to collect all the coins. levels. Trickety Tower is probably my favorite area in the game. It's small and simple, but that invisible platform gimmick is used to great effect. It has both a normal timer challenge and a blue coin switch, both of which are some of the highlights for me. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention the Fury Shadows, which are another reference to the GOAT of the series, Sunshine. These are a shadowy version of Luigi which show up in several locations, asking you to chase him down and deplete his health bar to earn a shine. It's a rather obvious homage to the Shadow Mario chases from Sunshine, down to how the Shadow can use your own moves to flee from you. I wouldn't call any of these hard by any means, but they're fun in their own way. Oh yeah, and the key to the shine missions. Those were kinda cool. They task you with tracking down a key and bringing it to the start of the area to unlock a cage shine. These are backtracking done right, and are surprisingly tense because if the key disintegrates if you touch water, or pretty much anything. On top of this, Lake Lapcat itself features shines not associated with any particular island. Some are just sitting there on a small island, a few ask you to hit one of those cat wheels and quickly climb the pillar it raises, and some task you with taking out all the enemies in a cloud heaven-like area ripped straight out of 3D World. I generally enjoy these, especially those that require a little bit of exploration to find. Although certain ones are a little too well hidden for my liking, and I'm the guy who loves blue coins. Those weren't too common though, and I had a blast finding most of these things. That being said, this game does have those objective types I'm not too keen on. First, and this is probably the worst of them, the Fury blocks. As we saw in the beginning, the game often has these blocks with Bowser's face on them. The only thing that can destroy them is Bowser's flame breath, so you'll have to wait until Fury mode activates to collect them. It feels a little sloppy and a bit like padding, especially when there's that situation where you're doing something else and Bowser's Fury activates, and you remember, oh shit, I was gonna do the Fury blocks earlier. I was gonna save those for later, and I gotta rush over there, and then he stops doing his Fury attack. Yeah, it's padding. Some shines also inexplicably just require Bowser to be in rage mode, such as this one isolated island or the Lucky Shine Isle. The latter is especially tedious to go after, since there's 5 possible locations for it to spawn in. I also don't care for the Calico Cat roundup tasks located on around each Gigabell shrine. It's cute, I'll give you that, but it's little more than a tedious fetch quest reminiscent of the Lady Piantas from Sunshine. You know, those ladies that asked you to get 3 of a certain fruit to the basket? Yeah, that's pretty much what this is. The last one is especially drawn out, since you have to bring 5 cats back to one place, and the second one has one cat that's located ridiculously far away from the others. And on both of them, Bowser interrupted me, which prevents you from completing the objectives until he decides to fuck off, because the cats turn evil. During the second one, the bastard even decided to pull the permanent Fury state, so I had to collect another shine to calm him the hell down, so that was irritating. On the topic of things I was unenthused by, the conditions to collect some of the cat shines are a bit unintuitive. While you can collect most of them on your first visit to any given island, you can't nab all of them. You'll collect several, then seemingly reach a dead end. With no way of collecting the remaining shines, you'll more often than not have to travel to another island to collect some more, until the same thing happens there. Then when you go back to the island you were originally on, something will have changed, which then allows you to go for the missing shines. Sometimes simply fighting Fury Bowser accomplishes the same thing. For the first time players, it's not the most clear thing in the world, and screws with the pacing a little bit. I wouldn't call it impossible to figure this out, and once you do it will begin to make sense, but even then I still wish you could collect every shine in your first go around like you could in 64, and most of the collectathons for that matter. Basically it's unnecessary backtracking that doesn't really have much of a reason to be there. The lack of fast travel in the early game is also not my favorite. The game's islands are separated by quite an expansive stretch of water, and the fastest way to reach them is to ride on Plessy. I thought this was pretty novel at first, but the longer I played, the more it became kind of tedious. Plessy has pretty cool objectives hidden around the lake, like I mentioned, but when you're just traveling, it feels a little more than a drawn-out commute. This is especially true if you miss a cat shrine in a location. You'll have to travel back to the island it was on and go all the way through the level again sometimes. But hey, they do rectify this after you collect 50 shines and finish the main story. For the latter 50 shines, you're given the ability to warp to the islands you've visited, much like the checkpoint warps in Odyssey, except they don't make you wait through an animation of Mario's cap flying to the area. I approve of this. By the way, that reminds me, I don't really like how they lock a lot of the shines behind beating the game in principle. It's a similar problem to Odyssey in that most of a kingdom's moons can only be contained in the post-game. However, I wasn't as bothered by it here because of the much less padded collectible count. The fast travel also helps quite a bit with that, and if that wasn't in the game, I'm sure I'd be way more annoyed by this fact. But hey, at least when you ride on Plessy, you can listen to some pretty good music. Alright, that transition was pretty goddamn bad, but you gotta hand it to me. Writing smooth segues in these videos is hard. Anyway, the music. Mario games are pretty much obligated by law to feature good music, and Bowser's Fury is no exception. It has a similar general style to 3D World, albeit a little less outwardly jazzy. Many tracks have a solid ambience to them, while others are plainly catchy, upbeat, and more Mario-like for the lack of a better term. The game also has some songs that lean into a new direction for Mario music, that being hard rock. Easily one of my favorite genres of music, as my videos should have demonstrated by now. These songs play whenever Fury Bowser is on a rampage and really set the mood of a destructive force attacking a peaceful, serene lake area. My favorite track in the game, however, has to be Scamper Shores. It takes that jazzy 3D world style and goes all in with it, featuring a violin melody that's hard not to tap your feet to. I won't speak anymore, just take a listen to some of these songs for yourself. Yeah, so there you have it, the final music montage of this retrospective. Feels kinda weird to say that, but yeah. I know I always say this, but the music speaks for itself, really. It's just really good, although I do kinda wish there were a few more songs. Since, like Mario 64, the game does reuse a few tracks across multiple areas. Regardless, upon collecting enough shines, Bowser enters a permanent fury phase that can't even be quenched by collecting a shine. This occurs around when you have 48 shines, and goddamn, how many times am I gonna say the word shine? And once you have 50, the final Giga Cat Bell awakes. A similar thing occurs as soon as you collect everything, as the Giga Cat Bell tells you to finally use the power of the shines to put a stop to Bowser's rampage over the lake. This enters the final boss sequence, which is a two-phase fight. Yeah, it's as quick as that. I'll admit, having a final stage would be kind of weird for the formula the game's going for, but it would have still been cool. Like if an island rose up and you gotta complete it to fight Bowser. I don't know. Just an idea. In any case, the first phase of this boss is a typical Fury Bowser fight, asking you to ground pound the beast into submission. It's not any harder than the other ones, even though it goes on noticeably longer than they did. Once you defeat him, the second phase starts. Bowser loses that inky black look he had, and instead appears with his normal colors, but with white eyes like his Herobrine or something. Oh man, just saying that name makes me instinctively bust out laughing for some reason. Bowser entraps the 3 Giga Cat Bells in a strange glass ball, and it's Mario's job to get them back from him. The design of this boss reminds me a lot of Sonic Generations, and in a more unfortunate similarity to that game's bosses, I don't think this fight is particularly good. Bowser only allows you to hit him when he feels like it, and in the extra final boss, he loves overwhelming you with a bunch of shit all at once that's obnoxious as all hell to dodge without taking damage. Thankfully, I had a lot of power-ups on hand for that, because I couldn't really imagine any other way through it sort of banging my head against the brick wall. It's a shame, really, because I love the visuals, similarly to the other Bowser fights. Oh well, what can you do? This is the Mario series, and bosses are not its strong suit. That's kinda just how it is sometimes. After beating Bowser for good, Mario and Plessy grow huge in triumph as Bowser shrinks down to his usual self. They prepare to crush him, but... Oh, okay, that's pretty funny. He also blasts off like Team Rocket and eventually lands near his son. He's dazed and confused and notices Mario over to the left. He tries attacking, but Mario just sits there with a stern look on his face, totally unfazed, only noticing when Bowser Jr. is already blocking his advances. Jr. drags him off screen, taunting Mario, indicating that they're back to being enemies once again. And the funniest part? All Mario can do is sit there, glance to the audience, and shrug. Mario has very little dialogue in this game as usual, but his animation is so good and packed with charm that it's entertaining in spite of that. And with that, Bowser's Fury comes to a close. This was an interesting experience for sure. In some ways, it was an experiment with the Collectathon Mario template, trying new things and, no pun intended, testing the waters of an expansion to the formula. In some ways, there's a couple rough edges. The performance isn't the best in the world, some objectives are strangely placed and require some backtracking to collect all of them, the Plessy travel is usually boring commute, and overall the game was pretty easy. However, I'd still say they're onto something with this one. They took the updated mechanics of Odyssey, such as keeping you in the level after collecting things, while combining it with the 100% focused experiences of the older games. If you just tightened up a few things here and there, you'd have a pretty winning formula for a 3D Mario game. And as is, it's already pretty good. As an expansion pack, this is shockingly good. In fact, I'd lovingly refer to this as the opposing force of the Mario series, if you will. Also, the fact it's included with another already good game, 3D World plus Bowser's Fury is an immense improvement from the laziness of 3D All-Stars, and a worthwhile package for anyone who enjoys Mario as much as I do. Not to be cliche, but it has a little something for everyone. Fans of the more linear stuff have 3D World, fans of the collectathons have Bowser's Fury, and those who get their jollies out of both, like me, have two great games for the price of one. Overall, I liked Bowser's Fury, and sure, I won't be playing it more than 64 and Sunshine, and I'd still say I even prefer the Galaxy games in Odyssey because they're more challenging overall. While this is probably my pick for the weakest Collectathon Mario, all things considered, I liked it a fair bit, and I imagine it's going to have more replay value than both Galaxies and Odyssey in the long run. It's a game that seems easy to pick up and play to full completion, which is ultimately what I love about Mario in general. His games are so much damn fun, and something you can can play any day of the week. And that brings me to the end of the retrospective as a whole. Bowser's Fury was a solid note to go out on, and embodies a lot of the reasons I love this series in the first place. Mario is a series that's so near and dear to my heart, not only because I grew up with his games, but just because they're the epitome of pure childlike wonder and joy. I like my fair share of more mature games and stuff like that, but almost nothing can compare to the pure wholesome fun of this series. They're games I can boot up, play through, and thoroughly enjoy. Sure, I've had my critiques of all of these games, and I spared no expense in making them known. The series has had its ups and downs, and has even produced a few games here and there that I just outright despise, but that doesn't matter to me. In the end, I don't really give a damn about the flaw count of something, but rather the experience it provides. I may criticize the lack of a save feature in Mario 3, or the camera in Mario 64, or the structure of Sunshine, or the clunky motion controls in Galaxy, but when all is said and done, the experiences this series has provided me are unmistakable and unforgettable. I remember the pure bliss of playing these games when I was younger, indulging in creepy fan theories, drawing pictures based on the characters and scenarios in the games, and all that stuff. This series just means so much to me, and holds a special place for me in this wonderful world of media and video games. It's a series that, young or old, anyone can enjoy. And say what you will about it, but that's special. That's part of the reason I switched up my style of videos to be media reviews and retrospectives, just so I could have the chance to talk about this series and document my thoughts on it for the world. I don't know what the future holds for this franchise. There's now rumors of a new 2D game, allegedly one that won't use the new Super Mario sub-series as a base. I guess, like anything else, we'll see how that goes. Until then, thank you, Mario. Thank you for all the fun over the years. Thank you for all the memories that will last a lifetime. Thank you for everything. And that does it. The mainline Mario Marathon is over, and it's time to move on. It's gonna feel so surreal that it's now something in the past. However, we're far from done here. There's still so many videos I want to do, so many thoughts and feelings that I'm itching to share with the world. I've got big things planned, so if you're interested, I'd say stick around. Also, even though this retrospective is over, I'm not quite done with Mario yet. Next time, I'll be capping off the marathon with what else but a ranking of all the games I reviewed or mentioned in this retrospective. Minus a few that I think are unnecessary to mention, because I have like nothing to say on them. A tier list, if you will. If you'd like to see that, it will be coming soon. Hopefully before the year is over, but we'll see. Also, if you've missed any of these videos, and I wouldn't blame you if you did, I'll probably be compiling all the reviews into a supercut, complete with doing over some segments totally from scratch. Though, I'm admittedly a bit Mario'd out by now, so that's a project for the future. Also, if any new mainline Mario games come out, and they for sure will, I'll talk about them as soon as I can get my hands on them. That's about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.
What, did you watch until the end, because you think there's gonna be some epic joke or some shit? No. The video, and by extension the retrospective, is over. Go to bed. It's all done. I said get the fuck out of here, you motherfucker.